on an all-new Dr. Phil. Her father died in a chokehold.
He was just pleading with them to have mercy.
Her son's death has torn a nation apart.
I was devastated.
Now, what you haven't heard.
Nobody's talking about this. You've been stopped by the police.
I did exactly what the officer told me to do.
They said the right thing, and they still came home in a body bag.
It makes people feel their lives are worth nothing.
We have a right to be safe.
Don't fight the police.
But the police are also dead wrong.
If you put hands on a police officer, there's going to be repercussions.
They survived a run-in with law enforcement.
We tried to de-escalate the situation.
You could have been shot and killed in that restaurant. I raised my boys with a mindset of do what you need to do to get home safely.
Black and blue. Race relations in America.
New York is a parking lot. Ferguson is on fire. From Cleveland to Chicago to Los Angeles and San Francisco, our nation is in turmoil. Racial tensions have reached a fever pitch ever since the deaths of Michael Brown, 12-year-old Tamir Rice, and Eric Garner, the unarmed father of 6, who died after being put in a chokehold by a police officer in New York. It's turned into the people versus law enforcement. But here is my question. What is the solution? Instead of sitting back and complaining, I want to take this conversation beyond what you've been seeing on the news. We've all been saturated by these images.
The deadly confrontation caught on tape.
A man thrown to the ground tries to tell arresting officers he's in trouble right before he dies. 43-year-old Eric Garner was taken to the pavement by a police officer using a chokehold, long banned by the NYPD.
Sometimes the use of force is necessary, but it's never pretty to watch.
Cause of death, homicide. That is the ruling today from the medical examiner in the death of Eric Garner.
Report states Garner died of compression of neck, compression of chest, and prone positioning during physical restraint.
A grand jury in Staten Island has come back and decided against an indictment.
Hundreds of protesters flood the streets of Manhattan, angry over the grand jury decision.
All across the city, they march.
The justice system is broken.
Now to another police shooting, this one in Cleveland.
A 12-year-old boy with a plastic pellet gun prompts a 911 call to police.
The guy keeps pulling it in out of his pants. It's probably fake, but you know what? He's scared.
Police say when they got to the scene, they saw 12-year-old Tamir Rice with a gun in his waistband. The officer shot him in the torso before Tamir could ever touch his gun.
There's the cop who shot and killed Tamir Rice. He had only 3 months of experience on Cleveland streets.
Protesters moved through downtown Cleveland, blocked streets, and staged die-ins.
Rice's family said, "It is our belief that this situation could have been avoided."
Ferguson, Missouri is a city on edge.
Saturday afternoon, Michael Brown is shot and killed on Canfield Drive.
Officer Darren Wilson said Brown grabbed him and hit him during a struggle at Wilson's police car.
Tension split and protests started.
Police shot off tear gas to stop coordinated violence by some protesters who fired gunshots and threw Molotov cocktails.
They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson.
Reaction to the grand jury's decision left destruction in the streets of Ferguson this morning. Rioting protesters are furious that Officer Darren Wilson will face no charges.
Right now in downtown L.A., where demonstrators are protesting.
A sea of headlights. Traffic backed up for miles.
Don't bow down. We got to win.
What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. Whites don't have a privilege just to do what they want and not get in trouble.
So what is the solution? You know, at best, I suppose it's to start a dialogue that doesn't end in gunfire, that doesn't end in death. Now, maybe we can't change what has happened, but this isn't the last time we're going to be faced with this. I want to speak with Eric Garner's family. His sister Alicia and oldest daughter Erica are joining us from New York. Alicia, Erica, first off, let me say how sorry I am for your loss. Were you guys completely shocked at this? Had there ever been any violent confrontation with law enforcement?
Not at all. Eric is definitely not known to be violent, so that's why we couldn't understand why he had to be taken down so violently.
He was just basically pleading with them, to have mercy, leave me alone. Like, you know,
they really didn't have a real reason to bother him that day. Well, we was told that a fight had broke out and the police was called. When the police came, they just came straight to him and began to harass him.
Well, when you watch that video, what do you see?
I see my brother standing up for his rights. I see him telling them, you know, I did nothing wrong. You guys was called for a fight and you coming over to harass me. That's what I seen at the beginning. Then, you know, he's saying, you know, this is going to stop because you always coming around me. Every time y'all come around me, y'all want to harass me, you know, about something. He never cursed at them. He never disrespected them. So it was no need for them to use any kind of force the way they did. And, you know, once they got him here down on the ground, he's telling them, I can't breathe.
Plenty of people around that could have stopped that, heard his cries. He was just trying to breathe. And him being a big guy and having asthma and laying in the position that they had him in, all his organs and lungs and everything was crushed. And it's like, how can you do this
overall,
to a human being?
It just was no need for them all to crowd up on him like that. They could have done things in a better manner. There was no need for that officer to jump on his back the way he did.
I want to add someone to this conversation. Reverend Al Sharpton, he is here now. He is the president of the National Action Network. He has been involved in both the Ferguson and the New York cases. Tell me what your take is on what's going on in these cases right now. What is this reflective of?
I think it's reflective of a breakdown in how the criminal justice system responds to police with excessive force. If you look at Staten Island, where a policeman on videotape obviously chokes a man and keeps choking him, surrounded by other police, even after 11 times he says, I can't breathe. In Ferguson, it's a young man, 18 years old, unarmed, who they say has taken some cigars. And the policeman ends up in an altercation with him, shoots at him 12 times, hits him 6 times, and he's dead. And neither policeman go to trial. The only purpose of a grand jury is to establish that there's enough reasonable doubt for a jury to decide whether the police or the accused is guilty or innocent. So when both cases, you see that a grand jury, which is a secret proceeding, only the prosecutor presents, there's nobody representing the other side, both of them say, no, don't even go to trial. It makes people feel their lives are worth nothing.
If these men were guilty of everything that could be alleged, neither one of those cases or situations would be, at the greatest stretch, a capital offense. But yet, in both cases, we have men that have been killed. What is broken in this situation?
At best, you would have got a ticket for selling cigarettes. And if the young man took cigars, that's shoplifting. He may have gotten a ticket or may have been brought to the station house. But to talk about killing people and then act like we shouldn't even question it with a trial, I think that is what is beyond the pale with many of us that are protesting this. I mean, what are we talking about where we have a society now where police cannot be brought to trial and even questioned? That's dangerous to everyone.
Is this just a situation of a lack of accountability where we have grand juries and prosecutors that are investigating their own?
I think that there's a lot of police policing themselves. You must remember, local prosecutors work hand in glove with local police. So you need a special prosecutor that does not have an intrinsic relationship with the police.
When I watch that video and I'm looking at the behavior of Eric here, I'm watching his hands, and I see frustration, but I don't see anything aggressive. I don't see anything that constitutes a threat against another.
We lose the fact these are human beings. If we cannot depend on local authorities to give human beings a trial over their loved ones, then we have no choice but to appeal to higher authorities.
Well, Reverend Sharpton, I hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much for being here today. Coming up, the story that started it all, a young man shot and killed, and a family who feels they have yet to receive justice.
Two parents who say they will get justice are now planning their son's funeral.
Just a normal 18-year-old finding his way.
My son didn't deserve that. Nobody's child deserves to be treated like that. Nobody's.
Saturday afternoon, Ferguson, Missouri. 18-year-old Michael Brown is walking home from a convenience store. Moments later, shots ring out. The Ferguson police officer fires his gun, killing Brown. An independent autopsy determined that Michael Brown was shot at least 6 times, twice in the head.
Michael Brown Sr. says the world was just getting to know his son.
He's a smart kid. You know, he make you laugh. He just graduated from high school.
He took my son away for nothing.
On July 17th in New York City, Eric Garner, a black father of 6, was put in a chokehold by a police officer and later died from his injuries. No charges were filed against any of the police on the scene. Less than a month later, another unarmed man, 18-year-old Michael Brown, was shot and killed by Officer Darren Wilson in Ferguson, Missouri. Officer Wilson was not charged. Sadly, this story is becoming all too familiar. Almost 3 years ago, Trayvon Martin was walking home from a store after buying Skittles when neighborhood watchman George Zimmerman said he feared for his life, so he shot the boy dead. He was not convicted. Today, Michael Brown's mother, Leslie, and Trayvon Martin's mother, Sabrina, join us with their attorney, Ben Crump. Eric Garner's sister, Alicia, and daughter, Erica, are also here. And Roland Martin is with us as well. He is an award-winning journalist and the host of TV One's News One Now. I'm wanting to talk about this because I feel like it gets lost in the headlines. I'm not talking about this as Dr. Phil. I'm talking about this as a father. Leslie, first let me tell you, I am so sorry for your loss. I cannot even imagine how you must feel.
Right now, at this point, I'm just living, you know, day by day.
There's been a lot of debate about whether or not your son attacked a police officer or not. Did your son have a history of being violent?
No, not at all.
Do you feel that it was reasonable for him to be shot 6 times?
No, I don't think he should have been shot 1 time.
When you heard that there would be no charges and that it was considered to be in the line of duty and within the scope of his authority to do so, how did you feel in that moment?
I was devastated, shocked, hurt, confused.
When you turned on the news and saw not only the demonstrators but the riots, how did you feel?
I feel like the whole state is upset.
You know, Trayvon's mother, Sabrina, is with us today. Sabrina, this had to just open this up to you all again.
It just really breaks my heart to see that the country is in a crisis right now.
You can't be shocked that this is still going on because you've seen this very thing happen with your own son.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think this decision really shocked a lot of people. I mean, if history it continues to repeat itself, not only do we need to change the laws, but we need to change people's mindset as well. Because if we have our young men and women that's afraid to walk home, then we definitely have a problem in this country, and we have a right to be safe.
Ben, when the information came that the grand jury was not going to indict, were you surprised?
Well, Dr. Phil, we know as history has taught us the prosecutor normally gets whatever outcome he wants in the grand jury. And so if the prosecutor wanted to get an indictment, he would have got an indictment. So I told Leslie, as I told so many other clients, that we have to fight to make the system be equal for our families too.
Alicia, when you and Erica found out that there was nothing to be brought against a police officer there, was this a surprise?
Not at all.
Not at all.
We knew it wasn't going to be a fair case. People have to start policing the police, point blank.
Sonny Hostin is a former federal prosecutor and CNN legal analyst and host. Sonny, you don't think there should have been a grand jury impaneled in either of these cases, correct?
The bottom line is that prosecutors indict cases and file charges against defendants every single day in our country without the use of a grand jury. I did it when I was a prosecutor. And let's remember that in the Zimmerman case, Angela Corey, whether you love her or hate her, she brought charges against George Zimmerman without bringing it in front of a grand jury. There's no question that prosecutors and police officers in their district work together. So to suggest that a prosecutor should be in charge of a case against police officers in his or her district is absurd.
There's a conflict of interest. I mean, you're too involved, you're too close to the situation. Right. It's asking too much. You bring in somebody objective.
I think that is what has led to this crisis of confidence. People do not trust those that are supposed to be serving and protecting them. Had there been a body camera on Officer Wilson, there would be a very different sentiment in our country. And we've got to have some training in terms of escalation of force. You have some sort of encounter with someone and you've got to take them down with a chokehold or shooting them. Our system is broken, but there are ways that it can be fixed.
And that's why a special prosecutor who's a career official, not an elected one, it matters.
Well, Mike Brooks is a former detective and 26-year veteran of the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. He also spent 6 years on the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, and he is here. Mike, should we put cameras on the police officers?
Absolutely. Every single police officer in this country should have a body camera.
And remember, Rialto, California, Mike, you know this well, when they got body cameras there, not only did the number of people complaining about police brutality drop in excess of 70%, the police department, those numbers also dropped in terms of people accusing them of abuse. And so it helped the police officers and it helped the public.
I think it's huge. I just think it's huge. All right, I want to say thank you to Ben and Leslie, Erica, Alicia, and Sabrina. Next, why a major athlete's Facebook post went viral, plus 2 college students in a fist fight with police, and it was all caught on tape.
The police aggressively approached us. That's when a puncher started flying. I do feel like I was racially profiled.
Case is ridiculous. I expect the cops to serve and protect and not to hurt us. No man deserves to be choked out in the street. Don't shoot, hands up.
At any time, I can easily get shot for no reason.
Don't shoot, hands up. Don't shoot.
If he had been a Caucasian male in the United States, he would be alive right now. And that's a fact.
Well, when I saw a very poignant Facebook post from a very famous athlete about the Ferguson grand jury's failure to indict, I just had to invite him here. So please welcome New Orleans Saints player Benjamin Watson. Take me through the moment when you found out what the verdict from the grand jury was in Ferguson.
I had so many emotions, like so many other people, and there was so much building up to this case that I had to write it down.
I want to take a look at some of what you posted.
I'm frustrated because pop culture, music, and movies glorify these types of police-citizen altercations and promote an invincible attitude that continues to get young men killed in real life, away from the safety of movie sets and music studios.
You said, I'm angry because of the stories of injustice. I'm fearful because I'm looked upon as a threat. I'm embarrassed because of the looting. I'm sad because a life was lost. I'm confused because I don't know why it's so hard to obey a policeman. And I'm encouraged because the problems are not skin problems, they're sin problems.
Yes.
What do you think's going on? Has our youth been given this fantasy view of life that is causing them to not appreciate the gravity of their actions?
When you have young men, young women, you know, watching these movies, listening to certain music, there is a certain bravado that many of us have when we listen to certain things. And then when we go into a real-life situation, it's not like that. You know, in a real-life situation with a police officer, that's why I said later on, why is it so hard just to do what the man tells you to do? But we inherently have this pride issue, and that's why I point to sin.
It's not always a question of can young folks obey the police. You also have to ask the question, why do police stop folks in certain instances?
I have to tell you, as a parent, I raised my boys with a mindset of do what you need to do to get home safely.
You're right.
And in doing that, I gave them a number of instructions. Number one, I said, you get stopped by the cops. You do what you're told when you're told. And if you've got a problem with it, we will take that up later. You've been stopped by the police, and you say, what do you do when you get stopped by the police?
They can't even match the music. They can't even rap, they're just black producing. Now they wanna crack the new shit. They just wanna act, they done bath the new kids. They can't even match the music. They can't even rap, they're just black producing. They just wanna crack the new shit. They just wanna act, they done bath the new kids. Sorry big man, with your big life and your kick man. Sorry big man, with your big life and your whip man.
I do what I have to do to get home safely. But the thing is, I was stopped by the police in New Orleans not too long ago. And I was driving, and they were just doing routine stops, and I rolled down the window, and I just talked to my wife about this recently. She said that there was a fear of what may happen because of the history, because of the generations of these stories that you hear. So when the window came down, she was worried.
Right.
I did exactly what the officer told me to do, but you still have this burden, so to speak, because you're not sure if it's going to be one of those situations. But what you do is you do exactly what you're told. You show your hands. You're respectful.
But the problem is, I don't know what that cop is going to do. Because there are those examples of when folks did the right thing, they said the right thing, and they still came home in a body bag. And so, that's the problem.
Okay, hang on. As a famous athlete and celebrity, Benjamin says he is always aware that he could be perceived as a threat because of his race. I wanted him to meet two brothers, Taiwan and Navon, who say they were profiled by the police.
We went to go pick up food for my mom, and the police pulled right in behind us. They immediately, aggressively approached my brother, asking him, "What did you say? I thought I heard you say something." I could tell he was looking for a fight. So my brother stepped over to talk to him, and his words were, "I'm a criminal justice major. I know every single one of my rights. Please tell me something that I did wrong." I said, "I'm in law school. Tell me one thing I've done wrong." Something about that ticked the police off. He pushed me, my hands went, and that's when the punches started flying at me.
We were booked on assault and battery on a police officer, obstruction of justice, and resisting arrest.
I do feel like I was racially profiled.
Okay, now, as you two look at this in retrospect, what would you do different, if anything, today?
Everything that you've seen transpire in the video, it was all reactionary and it was instinctive. My first thought was to defend myself. When that first punch was thrown, I didn't see police officers. I saw regular citizens that were a threat to my safety.
They say they thought they heard you say something to them and or about them as you were walking by. You say you were talking to each other.
Yes.
Amongst each other.
Okay, so you go in the restaurant, they come in the restaurant and ask you what?
What did we say to them in the parking lot?
Okay, and your response was?
We didn't say anything to you. We were talking to ourselves.
Okay, and then they asked for what?
License.
Okay.
ID. We asked them what did they need our ID for, because we didn't do anything wrong.
I'm here with two college students, Navon and Taiwan, who say they found themselves in a situation just like Michael Brown and Eric Garner's when they faced two police officers, but they fought back. Now, also with me is New Orleans Saints tight end Benjamin Watson, and also joining us is the host of New York TV 1, Roland Martin, and former detective of 26 years, Mike Brooks. Now, you saw the video. What's your response to that?
My reaction is, I would have probably done the same thing. You know, I would have asked, you know, what do you need? What do you need this for? You know, why are you approaching me when I haven't done anything? And I think that's a natural reaction.
But then they come in and confront you. That seems inappropriate to me. Then they ask you for your driver's license. But I'm telling you, if you're my sons as a father, I'm telling you, show them the license, write down all of the information, file a complaint. You could have been shot and killed in that restaurant. You get into a conflict with armed people with a badge. That's dangerous.
We tried to de-escalate the situation.
He's a law student. A law student is thinking, I am an American. I have rights, and I get the notion of getting home, but you're thinking, wait a minute, I did nothing, I know the law, I know you're wrong, and I don't have the right to even question you.
Then he also knows pick your battlefield, and your battlefield is not at midnight with an armed guard.
But
pick your battlefield.
But Dr. Phil, when you are an African-American and you are treated like a second-class citizen...
But you still don't fight the police.
But the police are also dead wrong, and the reality is this
if
here...
If you're wrong, you get their name, you get their badge number, you can get an attorney.
And wait a minute.
And you know what?
If a cop ever gets indicted, how's he going to have...
If you hit a policeman, if you put hands on a police officer, there's going to be...
Can I say 2 points? 2 points. If you throw a punch, you are no longer a policeman. I'm defending myself.
As long as you're still in uniform.
If you hit me unnecessarily,
whether he was a cop or not, right?
I told him, I don't have an ID on me. I patted my pockets. I don't have an ID. Where's your badge number? But to your point, if you police officer or not, if you hit someone, you're no longer that person in that uniform. That's a.
Well, they could be charged too if they're found at fault. Well, the bottom line is,
but if you kill Eric Garner, you don't get charged.
Okay, all right, let me stop this for just a second. I've got to say two things. Number one, I'm saying you want to pick your battlefield, and what we're seeing is that maybe there isn't a battlefield because you can file a complaint, and based on patterns, it isn't going to go anywhere. But I'm just saying. Okay, hold on. Let me finish. I'm just saying, I just don't want you young men to get hurt. That's all I'm trying to say. The second thing I want to say, Sean Payton, the coach of the New Orleans Saints, is a really good, longtime personal friend of mine. And if I don't get you out of here and on that flight, I am going to be in a lot of trouble with my friend. So we have to say goodbye to Benjamin. Benjamin, first off, thank you for making the effort to be here and to say what you've had to say. Thank you so much. Coming up, we're going to add another story to this conversation. A brother and sister who say their innocent sibling was murdered by police. And just like Michael Brown, there has been no justice. But there is something that makes this case very different. That's next. Is excessive force by police a black and white issue? Cody and Tisha say 2 days after Michael Brown's death, their innocent brother was shot and killed by police. There were no charges against the officer. They want to know why this story hasn't gotten any attention.
Around 7 o'clock last night, someone called 911 about a man waving a gun.
The guy flashed the gun. Where was the weapon? It's in his waistband.
The officers were responding to a call about a man with a gun when they encountered Dylan Taylor. Salt Lake City police officer was wearing a body camera when he confronted Dylan Taylor. Officers follow Taylor, who puts his hands in front of him and turns around.
Get your hands out now! Get your hands down!
That's when Officer Cruz shoots Taylor in the chest and stomach.
As a command was given to him to stop and show his hands, he responded saying, "No fool," lifted his shirt up and moved his hand from the waistband.
After the shooting, the officer gives Taylor first aid.
Stay with me, buddy.
But Taylor isn't breathing.
What the hell were you reaching for, man? I can't find a weapon on him.
Dylan's family says he wasn't a threat.
At this moment, I don't want to believe that there's good cops, but I know there is. It's so hard for me to believe it because one just killed my brother.
Wow. Cody, you're Dylan's brother. First off, let me say I am so sorry for your loss. This is just, I'm so sorry for your loss. What do you think happened here?
I think it was just wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, somebody called 911 about him waving a gun around. I mean, I don't know what was communicated through dispatch to the officer, but they went in there ready to take somebody out. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
Okay, so we see what happens, and your brother turns his back and walks away, but he puts his hands out, right?
He lifted his shirt up. I mean, there was no visible weapon. There was another officer, gun drawn, and he did not shoot because he knew better. You need to wait and confirm that there's going to be a weapon. Okay. There's no reason for him to jump the gun.
There's an epidemic in the state of Utah of people being killed at the hands of police. And so what we're dealing with here, and I heard Dr. Phil earlier in terms of what you tell kids, we also got to start telling cops some stuff. You have to have better training. You got to have better teaching. And in this case here, we have got to stop this nonsense where we give police so much leeway where they can automatically say, my life was in danger. He was saying, I'm not armed.
But I'm glad that they had a camera. He had a body camera on. When I'm looking at this.
We saw Eric Garner with a camera and no indictment.
Let me finish. I'm looking at this, and I'm saying to myself, this looks like the classic shoot, don't shoot video where you've got somebody, and then you, at least the officer here, afterwards, try to aid your brother.
Well, no.
What isolation is
He,
that?
Hold on. Let's take, hold on.
Eric Garner, he didn't do anything.
If you don't shoot, you don't have to give aid.
All right. Well, look, hang on. Yeah, here's the problem, and Roland makes a point that I believe in very strongly. If you have police, they need to have the power to induce order. But if that power doesn't have check and balances, if they are not held accountable for their decisions, if they are not properly trained, then you are going to have chaos, and we're seeing that now. Let's look at this video again and see what happens.
Get your hands out now! Get your hands out! Get him out!
He's doing what he thought at that particular time he had to do. It's a split-second decision, and I hope nobody in this studio ever has to make that split-second decision, because I have, and it's not a great thing to do.
It's a shock when a cop is indicted. We're not surprised when they're not indicted, and that's the problem.
Indicted all the time. People never even hear about because
let me ask you this,
it's not on a case like Eric Garner.
Hold on a minute. I understand what you're saying about having to act in the moment, but I'm certain that officer should have, or certainly could have been wearing body armor, could have stayed behind the police cruiser. There were all kinds of opportunities to not put himself in harm's way. But this officer was cleared.
Oh, yeah, I'm being justified, 100%.
When the cop who killed his brother is cleared after that video, when the cop in New York is cleared with Eric Garner, this system gives them the right, and DAs are in bed with police officers, and that's why we need to have special prosecutors.
Next, what can we learn from these tragic stories so that no more lives will be unnecessarily lost? We're going to talk about that and more when we come back. I want you to take a look at this clip from the upcoming movie Selma. It's produced by my good friend Oprah Winfrey.
Mr. President, in the South, there have been thousands of racially motivated murders. We need your help, Dr. King. This thing's just going to have to wait. Selma it is.
Here is the next great battle.
We must march. We must stand up. You
march those people into rural Alabama, it's got to be open season.
May I have a word?
There's no word to be had.
We must make a massive demonstration. White, black, and otherwise. Come to Selma.
I heard about the attack of innocent people. I couldn't just stand by.
This revolution goes on and on. 50 years ago, how much have things changed? I think they've changed a lot, but I think there is a whole lot of work left to do. I wrote a blog about that movie in the middle of the night after watching it. And I posed a question in there that I'd like all of you to read and answer. It'll be on dr.phil.com. Michael Brown's pastor, Carlton Lee, of the Flood Christian Church in Ferguson, joins the conversation with us right now. Pastor, this situation is clearly broken. And one of the things that bothers me about it is that it devolved into not demonstration, but riots. Your church was burned down. What needs to happen to bring about a change?
Number one, I think we need to have more uncomfortable conversations. For 120 days now, since Michael Brown Jr. was brutally murdered, there has been, in my opinion, there has been some cute conversations. We need to really have some uncomfortable conversations to begin this healing process.
I told a young lady who called me after the Eric Garner decision, she was in tears, it hit me at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I said, this may sound strange to you, but America needed the Eric Garner grand jury decision to go the way it went, to shake us out of our coma.
Because I think people should look at the facts here, and I just want to run through a couple of things that I thought were major problems that jumped out to me about this case with regard to Officer Wilson. Number one, he admitted to washing blood off of his body. He didn't follow usual protocol when turning over a weapon. He claimed to not know about the robbery, then changed the story and said Brown fit the description of the suspect. Then I look at the actions of Chief Jackson. He waited a week to identify the officer. Why? He released a video of Brown in the store because it seemed to me that it was a smear campaign. And it was reported that he requested Officer Wilson have x-rays at the hospital. Why is the police chief requesting an officer to have x-rays unless he's trying to build a case?
And the chief lied because he said the media requested the videotape, and there's no record of any Freedom of Information request from the media requesting that. So when the chief is lying for a week, the public is going, man, I can't trust you.
And they didn't record the initial interview. They didn't test his gun.
International. Girl, what's your name? I have to know. Ain't no one else in your lane. Let's fill this car with gas and go. No hesitation, I'm on it. If that's the way that you want it, that's cool with me, so let's ride. Let's go somewhere that you lie.
They didn't test it for fingerprints.
If you fire a semi-automatic weapon at someone, and if you're a distance away, you're not going to have any gunshot residue on you. But they did find gunshot residue inside of Officer Wilson's car, and they also found it on Michael Brown.
I got to say one more thing, and then I know we got to move on here, because this goes to the trust issue. There was a serious error of law committed by the assistant district attorney in this case, because there was an instruction given to the grand jury, and that instruction basically said that the officer had the right to shoot a suspect if they were fleeing. That was the instruction that was given to the grand jury before they heard the testimony. And later, after it was all over with, somebody came in and said, we better go in and amend the record. So they went in and put in the correct law. That's like the headline here, the correction on page 18. Right. Nobody's talking about this. Sonny, that...
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because it was just a travesty of justice. And my friend Roland keeps on saying it's about trust. It's about trust. I like to say it's about a crisis in confidence. And that is what is so apparent when you look at that grand jury proceeding. It was a sham, a complete sham for those of us who are in the know.
So they looked at all the evidence through this filter. Their opinions crystallized with this filter, that under the law, he had the right to shoot this man if he was fleeing. I'm sorry, that if you were in trial, that is reversible error like that. I'm not a lawyer, don't mean to brag, but I'm not. But I'm sorry, that is reversible error. We're out of time here, and I guess I'm just left with the thought of saying, you know, obviously, where would our nation be if we didn't respect the badge? There has to be some order. Without law enforcement and respect for police officers, there would just be chaos. But that respect has to be earned. That respect has to be warranted. And I think the vast majority of people in law enforcement have their hearts in the right place. They mean to do the right thing. But there are those that just make the wrong decisions in the wrong way, and they do need to be held accountable. And unless and until people are held accountable, these things will continue to happen. But just as each of you and I are held accountable in our jobs and in our walks of life, they must be held accountable in their jobs as they walk through their life.
Yep.
I believe that. I want to thank all of my guests for joining me today. Thank you, especially Roland Martin. Thank you, Pastor Carlton Lee. Thank you so much. If you want to see more about today's topic, our conversation is going to continue online on drphil.com. Thank you so much for watching.